She didn't blink. She just looked across the table and said, "We used your college fund for your sister's IVF." No apology, no hesitation. Lauren smiled like it was some inside joke I'd eventually grow into. You'll understand someday. My father pretended to rearrange the silverware. I felt the room tilt, but I didn't cry, didn't ask why. I set my glass down steady and said one word that sliced the air clean in half: refund. And in that moment, everything in our family, every secret, every lie finally broke loose. Before I go on, are you still with me? My name is Camila, and for most of my life, I thought our quiet little suburb worked like a shield. Soft lawns, neat fences, neighbors waving from driveways. A place where family meant safety, where promises lasted. But if you grow up believing something long enough, sometimes you don't notice the cracks until the whole thing splits under your feet. In our house, the cracks always began with Lauren. She was 10 years older, the golden child, from the moment she could talk front row photos on the mantle trophies, displayed like museum pieces, every decision in the house bending toward what made her life easier. I was the kid who filled in the background of those memories, the one who got told, "Let your sister go first," or "You can wait, honey, you're young." After a while, I learned to step back before anyone asked. Mom called it balance. Dad called it keeping the peace. I called it normal until I got old enough to realize normal shouldn't feel like disappearing. By the time I graduated high school, I had one thing that was supposed to belong to me, my college fund. Mom and Dad talked about it for years, how they'd been putting money aside since I was little, how they wanted me to have choices. Even when finances got tight, they promised it was safe. I held on to that promise like it was a doorway out of the shadow I'd grown up in. But life didn't line up the way I planned. I took a job as an assistant in a small office downtown, trying to save enough to reapply to college after taking a year off. I used to walk to the bus every morning, coffee cooling in my hand, telling myself it was temporary, that soon I'd be back on campus, building something of my own. I didn't know then that the future I was working toward was already gone. If I'd paid more attention, maybe I would have noticed the signs. The way Mom avoided talking about money, the way Dad looked away whenever I mentioned tuition deadlines, the way Lauren bragged about trying again without ever saying what those attempts cost. But families are strange. The people you love can look you in the eye for years and still hide the very thing that will break you. And so when my mother finally said the words at that dinner table when she said they'd used my fund for Lauren's IVF, the shock wasn't that they'd done it. The shock was realizing how easy it had been for them. The night after that dinner, I lay awake replaying every second of it, the calm way Mom delivered the news, the practiced smile on Lauren's face, the way Dad shrank into silence like he'd rehearsed disappearing. I kept hearing the same sentence over and over like a leak dripping in a dark room. "We used your college fund for your sister's IVF." The next morning, I tried to convince myself it couldn't be as bad as it sounded. Maybe Mom had exaggerated. Maybe there was still some money left. Maybe they'd misunderstood what those accounts were for. Families mess up. Families make mistakes. That's what I told myself as I opened my online banking at my desk during lunch. But when the screen loaded, my stomach dropped. The college account empty. Zero. Not a single dollar left. And something else. A notification I'd never seen before. A dip in my credit score, sharp and sudden. Beneath it, a line item tied to a loan I had never taken. For a few seconds, my hands went cold. Someone had used my information, my name, my details, quietly, confidently, as if they assumed I wouldn't check, as if they believed I'd never question them. I wasn't sure what scared me more, the betrayal or the ease with which it seemed to have happened. That night, I brought it up gently, almost timidly, like I was trying not to wake a sleeping animal. "Mom," I said, standing in the kitchen doorway, "did you and Dad take out anything in my name?" She didn't even turn fully toward me. "Camila, don't start this again. You're making it bigger than it is. We did what we had to for Lauren." "For Lauren," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's been struggling," Mom said sharply. "This is her chance to be a mother. Families support each other. You'll understand someday." The same line Lauren had said. The same tone, the same entitlement. In that moment, something in me snapped, not loudly, but quietly, like a thin wire pulled too tight, finally giving way. This wasn't support, I said. It was my future. Lauren walked in just then, holding a mug of tea she didn't even pretend to sip. "Oh, stop acting like a victim," she said. "You're young. You can start over. Some things are more important than school." It wasn't just the words. It was how she said them, like my life was a spare drawer she could pull from whenever she needed something. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a system, a pattern, a choice they made together. And if I didn't do something now, it would never stop. The next few days felt like walking through fog, thick, heavy, impossible to breathe through. I went to work, answered emails, sat in meetings, but my mind kept drifting back to those numbers on my screen. The empty account. The loan I never took. The way my mother brushed it off like I was being dramatic. But fog has a strange way of clearing when you finally stop trying to pretend you're not lost. On Thursday evening, I opened my laptop at the small table in my apartment and laid everything out, the savings I had left, my pay stubs, the statements from my bank, every payment tied to Lauren's treatments. The deeper I went, the clearer it became. This wasn't support. This was extraction. Systematic, planned, executed behind my back. At one point, I found a document with my name attached to a cosign line I'd never filled. I stared at it for a long time, feeling something cold wrap around my spine. Someone had used information only family should have had access to. I thought of every time I'd handed Mom my mail because she said she'd sort it. Every holiday when Dad asked me for my Social Security card, just in case he needed it for taxes. Every moment I trusted them without a second thought. Suddenly, my apartment felt too small, like the walls were leaning in. I stepped outside into the evening air, cool, quiet grounding, and walked until my steps steadied again. The next morning, I showed Jade the loan entry on my credit report. She stared at it, then at me. "Camila, that's not an accident." I nodded. "I know. You can't let this keep happening." "I won't." That was the pivot, the quiet shift from shock to clarity. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. Mom was in the living room folding towels, Lauren on the couch scrolling her phone. They barely acknowledged me when I walked in, like I was an interruption rather than a daughter. I set a folder on the coffee table. Mom looked up. "What's this proof?" I said. "Of everything I didn't agree to." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said softly. "I'm being accurate." She stiffened. Mom reached for the folder, flipping through the papers with quick, irritated movements. "Where did you even get all this? My accounts, my statements, my credit report." For once they had nothing to say. I took a breath. Steady, controlled. "If you want to talk about this, meet me at the clinic tomorrow afternoon. All of you." Lauren frowned. "Why?" "Because it's time everyone heard the truth. From the one person none of you can argue with." I walked out before they could answer, letting the door fall shut behind me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. The next afternoon, the sky hung low and gray over the city, one of those still muted days where everything feels suspended like the world is holding its breath. I parked outside the clinic and sat for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching my family trickle in, one by one. Lauren arrived first, stepping out of her car in a crisp beige coat, chin lifted, as if she were heading into a boardroom she already owned. Mark followed behind her, eyes down, shoulders tense. Then Mom and Dad came walking side by side, but not quite together. Mom's jaw tight, Dad's expression unreadable. None of them looked at me as we stepped into the waiting area. The receptionist nodded politely. "You're here for the consultation," I nodded back, though consultation felt far too gentle for what was about to happen. We were led to a small private room, white walls, a soft lamp, a round table in the center. It was too quiet, too calm, too clean for the mess we were carrying in. Lauren sank into a chair with an annoyed sigh. "I still don't understand why we're here," she muttered. "You will," I said, sitting across from her. My voice was steady, almost calm. It surprised even me. Mom leaned forward. "Camila, if this is another attempt to guilt trip us..." "This isn't about guilt," I said, choosing each word carefully. "It's about truth." Before anyone could respond, the door opened and Dr. Mao. Patel walked in a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the sort of quiet authority that made people sit up a little straighter. Lauren instantly softened her posture, smoothing her hair like a child trying to impress a teacher. "Thank you all for coming," Dr. Patel said gently, taking a seat. "I understand there's some confusion about the treatments and decisions made over the past year." Confusion. A polite word. Too polite. Lauren smiled, all charm. "Yes, my family seems to think there's been some sort of misunderstanding." The doctor clasped her hands together. "Well, let's talk openly so we can clear things up." I watched Lauren's face, the subtle smugness in her eyes. She truly believed the doctor would back her up. She didn't know what I'd asked for when I called the clinic that morning. Not private records, not confidential information, just clarity about decisions Lauren herself had made. Decisions she'd insisted the clinic defend. Dr. Patel exhaled slowly. "Lauren, when you first came to us, we discussed the root of the fertility challenges you and Mark were facing." Lauren stiffened. I don't know what you mean." Dad shifted. Mark froze. Dr. Patel continued gently. "You've known since your initial screening that your test results were healthy. The difficulty conceiving isn't yours." Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Mom blinked. "What? Then why?" "Because it was easier this way," Dr. Patel said, glancing kindly toward Mark. Lauren was very clear that she didn't want anyone to know. She requested we frame the treatment as her issue, not his. Lauren shot up from her chair. "You're violating my privacy." The doctor shook her head calmly. "I'm not sharing anything beyond what you have already acknowledged in front of us during prior consultations. I'm simply clarifying the choices made, choices that affected your family financially and emotionally." Mom's face drained of color. Dad rubbed his forehead like he'd been punched. I leaned forward, my voice quiet but sharp. "So the college fund wasn't for IVF because Lauren was struggling. It was to protect her pride." Lauren whipped toward me. "You don't understand anything," "No," I said. "I understand perfectly. You didn't want to admit the truth, so you used what wasn't yours." Her voice cracked. "I just wanted a chance at a family. What's so wrong with that?" "Nothing," I said, softly. "But taking my future wasn't your right." Mom looked between us, eyes shiny, with something that looked like guilt, but guilt that was arriving far too late. "Lauren, how could you let us believe you wouldn't have helped Lauren snapped? You always said Camila could wait. You said she was young. You practically handed me the money." Mom's mouth opened, then closed. She had no defense. Mark finally spoke, voice low. "Lauren, this went too far." She spun on him. "You weren't supposed to say anything." He looked at the floor, and for once I saw the exhaustion in him, the quiet desperation of a man who'd been carrying shame that didn't belong entirely to him. Dr. Patel interjected softly, "I'm not here to judge anyone, but secrets grow heavier the longer we carry them." I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the table. Bill's payment trails, statements, and the loan tied to my name. Lauren stared at it as if it were a bomb. "This," I said, tapping the folder, "is everything you used without permission. Everything you decided was yours. I'm not here to scream at you. I'm here to give this back to the right people." Mom looked terrified. "Camila, we'll fix it. We'll handle the loan. I know," I said. "Because starting today, I won't carry it." Dad swallowed hard. "We never meant to hurt you. You didn't think about hurting me," I replied. "You didn't think about me at all." For a long moment, no one said a word. Then I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "I'm done being the easy one, the flexible one, the one who can wait. From now on, any debt with my name on it gets handled legally. Any financial tie between us ends today." Lauren's face twisted. "So that's it? You think you're better than us now?" "No," I whispered. "I just finally think I'm enough." The room felt different after that, lighter for me, heavier for them. I stood, gathering my things. "Thank you, doctor." As I walked toward the door, Mom reached out. "Camila, wait. Please." I paused, but I didn't turn back. "You took my future like it was spare change. I'm taking it back." Then I walked out of the clinic, letting the door fall shut behind me. Outside, the air felt cold and clean, like a new beginning. For the first time in my life, the silence around me didn't feel empty. It felt like freedom. In the days that followed, the fallout settled slowly like dust drifting through a room after something heavy has collapsed. No shouting. No dramatic confrontations. Just the quiet, undeniable consequences of truth finally spoken out loud. Lauren called once. I let it ring. Mom tried twice. I let both go to voicemail. Dad sent a short message. We're taking care of the loan. It wasn't an apology, but it was an admission. And that was enough. Meanwhile, Mark reached out not to defend himself, not to blame anyone. He simply wrote, I'm sorry for my part in all of this. I should have spoken sooner. His honesty surprised me more than anything that happened in that clinic room. Lauren and Mom, on the other hand, were forced to deal with the weight of their choices. Without my fund propping up more treatments, the financial strain shifted directly onto them. The veneer of control Lauren always wore cracked. She stopped posting smiling photos. The constant updates about trying again vanished. Mom became quieter, more careful with her words, as though she'd finally realized silence wasn't the same as safety. I moved into a small apartment closer to downtown, a place with scratched floors and thin walls, but sunlight that pooled across the bed every morning. I bought a cheap desk, set it by the window, and spent nights working through my college application essays. For the first time, the future I imagined wasn't tied to what someone else allowed me to have. It was mine. Jade stopped by one evening with takeout and a grin. You look lighter, she said, handing me chopsticks. I feel lighter, I admitted. And it was true. The ache was still there, but it had changed. It wasn't the hollow, suffocating kind anymore. It was the ache of healing, of growing. As I hit submit on my first college application, a quiet certainty settled over me, something I'd never felt before. I wasn't the background character in my own family anymore. I was choosing myself. I used to think family was something you protected no matter the cost, but now I know the truth. Protecting yourself is not betrayal. It's survival. The day I walked out of that clinic, I didn't just leave their mistakes behind. I stepped into my own life for the first time. And submitting those college applications, that was my refund. Not in dollars, but in dignity, in direction, in taking back what was stolen from me. If my story speaks to something you've lived through, if you've ever had to fight for your own future, tell me where you're listening from. Share your story in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.